Hey guys, welcome to the Stack4 exploit from Protostar. Starting with this video, I'm not going to be using this this layout here, simply because it's just too hard to see what's going on. On low resolutions, I'm not sure if it's possible to see exactly what I'm typing, or if I'm even defeating the challenge. So from now on, I'm going to be secure shelling to Protostar. And I'm going to be showing you how to do that really quickly here as well. So when you open up VirtualBox Manager, go ahead and select Protostar before you start it up. Go to its settings and network settings, and the network should be attached to the host-only adapter. So not the NAT, use the host-only adapter. Make sure that the name of the adapter is VirtualBox Host-Only Ethernet Adapter. If this is not available to you, then it probably has something to do with your installation. You should go back and check that you have installed VirtualBox with the right settings. Then go ahead and select OK. Then go to your VirtualBox sign in with user and then type IP-ADDR. This will give you your IP information, and we're going to be looking at ETHO, and this is where basically you've linked your adapter to. And your INET here will give you the address 192.168.56.101, and this is where you're going to be secure shelling to. Your username is going to be user, and the password after you're in is obviously user as well, as we've done it multiple times before. So now we're in the terminal here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. And let us secure shell to user at 192.168.56.101. This number may be different for you actually, so it might not work if you just do the same thing I'm doing right now, but this is just how it is for me. So once we do that, we're greeted with Protostar. You might actually get a message before asking you whether you or not you want to authenticate it or allow the connection. Just say yes. Okay, so now we're in, and we're asked for a password. It's user. Okay, great. So now we're in here. We're going to go to, let me just run bash first. And let's go to our problem directory. So it's opt protostar bin. Let's look at the files. Great. So now we have these files here. So we're going to be looking at Stack4. So let's go ahead and look at the problem description of Stack4. All right. About. Stack4 takes a look at overwriting saved extended instruction pointer and standard buffer overflows. We're given a couple hints here. A variety of introductory papers into buffer overflows may help. We've essentially been doing buffer overflows, just this one is the legit thing here. GDB, okay, and EIP is not directly after the end of buffer. Compiler padding can also increase the size. Great, so this is the source code. We have, again, a when function, just like before, Stack3. And then we have a main, which all it does is allocate some space on the stack for a buffer, 64 bytes, and then gets the buffer, calls gets. And we know that's always a bad idea. That's all it does. How in the world are we going to get it to call win? Well, let's find out. So first thing we want to do is go ahead and just run GDB on it and see what we can learn from just the disassembly. So let's go back here and use GDB on Stack4. Okay, let's set disassembly flavor to Intel. And then let's set a breakpoint at main, run, and disassemble main. Wow. So we have a push EBP and a move EBP to ESP. So this is, again, the very standard stuff that we've been talking about. This instruction here is curious. We have an AND of ESP hex FFFFFFF0. And we talked about this actually in the first episode, and I believe also in the previous one, maybe. And all this does is basically clear the last 4 bits of ESP so that it basically keeps alignment with forward blocks of memory. And this may cause some complications, but this is actually what it means by the padding. Otherwise, what happens, it just subtracts ESP, it subtracts hex 50 from ESP, and then it calls gets with basically the address, the load effective address just loads the address of ESP plus hex 10. So this is where we learn that our buffer starts at ESP plus hex 10. We want to essentially, to beat this level, we would really like to call win, but how do we call win when there's no explicit call inside main? Well, what happens when the processor gets to return? Essentially, it's a pop, and then it loads the pop into the instruction pointer. So if we can somehow overwrite the return address, we can call win. So in order to do this, let us look at the general stack layout for x86 machines. So this is really good post. You can just look it up. Journey to the stack. And basically this is what it looks like. So there's an EBP, there's an ESP, and the AX is just, this is a general purpose, but it contains the return value. We don't really care about that here. So the EBP is the base pointer, also known as the frame pointer, and it always points to the saved EBP. And the EBP plus 4 will always give you the return address. So if we can write to EBP plus 4, we can write to the return address. Now let's go back to our disassembly here. We see that we have a push EBP and then a move EBP or ESP into EBP. So after this address, EBP and ESP are the exact same thing. Of course, ESP is changed here and changed here, but as long as we can figure out what the relationship between the two is, we can find a way to overwrite EBP plus x4. It's very simple. So in order to do this, let's set a few breakpoints. Let's set a breakpoint first here. Actually, let's set one here after the move EBP ESP, and then let's set another breakpoint after the AND instruction there. Wonderful. So now let's continue. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Let's run this again. Okay, so we hit breakpoint 2. I don't know why that happened, but anyways, we're at breakpoint 2 now, and that looks like that one there. So let's examine the registers. And we see ESP and EBP are the same. They are BFF FF7A8. Let's take a look at what happens after. So now we're at breakpoint 3. After the AND, we see, just as expected, the last 4 bits, or the nibble, the least significant nibble of ESP has been cleared. So now ESP is essentially 8 less than EBP. And then of course we know what happens next. ESP is decremented by hex 50. And then the buffer starts at actually ESP plus hex 10. So the difference between these two should give us the size of the buffer, and we shouldn't be surprised to learn that that is hex 40, which is decimal 64. That is exactly the size of the buffer that we asked for in the C program. So in order to accomplish this task, we have to first overwrite the buffer, then overwrite the padding. After that, we need to figure out exactly where that is, so let's take a look at this again. So return address is EBP plus 4. So we need to do 4 more bytes. We need to write 4 more bytes, and then we write the return address. So let's look at basically the idea of our exploit here. So essentially, if this is our higher memory is down, then what happens is there's something here. That's a block. My bad. It's hard to draw with the mouse here. And EBP is pointing to this. EBP is pointing to its saved EBP. Now the saved EBP is from the function that called main. So it's some random value that we don't really care about actually. This is the saved EBP. Above the saved EBP is our above our saved EBP is our returned. Actually, my bad. Below our saved EBP is our return address. So this is the thing we're interested in overwriting. The return address. This is at EBP +4. Okay, and our stack pointer is actually pointing somewhere up here. We don't really know where it is. ESP. But we know that at ESP +10, so there's some space here. ESP +10 is the beginning of our buffer. That buffer extends down all the way to some point here. And we know that the padding that they were talking about is just this space here. And if you recall from what we saw when looking at the registers, we saw that this padding is of size 8. Remember, the buffer here is of size 64. And the saved EBP, one of these long blocks here, you should realize, is really just 4 bytes. 32 bits, why it's called a 32-bit machine. So registers are 32 bits, which is 4 bytes. So the saved EBP here is 4. So to overwrite this return address, we have to first overwrite 64 plus 8 plus 4, 72, sorry, my bad, 76 bytes of buffer there. And then after 76 bytes, we append the address of when. And when the program gets to return, that address return, it will just return to when, instead of returning to whatever function called main, which is what it's supposed to do. And that way, we will win the challenge. So, one thing we obviously have to do is figure out the address of when. So let's do that now. The address of when is hex 080483F4. Great. So now let's quit GDB. Now we have enough information where we can actually just go ahead and create thing here. So this will fill up the buffer. Then we want to fill up the padding. To fill up the padding, remember padding is 8 bytes because this difference here between ESP and EBP. After that, we want to overwrite the saved EBP. And after that, we write the address in Little Endian, recall. So this is F4 830408. This is the address in Little Endian. The smallest byte is first. So we will pipe this into Stack4, and we get the success message, code flow successfully changed. We have successfully called when. And you may be asking, why is there a seg fault? Well, that's clear why there's a seg fault. It's because when we buffer overflowed, we wrote some junk to the stack. And so when the function when tried to return, it tried to return to some garbage address that we don't know. And honestly, we don't care. As you'll see in the next few exploits, we'll be able to do some really useful stuff in place of just this. message here. So in this exploit, we saw how even if there's no explicit call to a function pointer, we are still able to jump to things that we want to jump to and call the things that we want to call. So this will be very useful for us. So until next time, take care. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is a lot easier to see than how I did it before. Otherwise, I will see you in Stack 5.